All right, so as a possible project idea for thermodynamics, one of the ones that I suggested was that you develop a game or a puzzle to represent the principles of thermodynamics. So this is an example of a game that I've put together here. And we've got cubes that are going to represent heat. And the game starts by placing cards next to the pile of cubes, which again represent heat. And you may place on a card adjacent to the pile here the number that is indicated on the card. So I just placed 10 cubes, right? Okay, and Miss Odell here is going to place 12. Okay, so anytime you play a card next to the pile, you get to move that number of cubes onto the card. Okay, the other possibility is that you can play a card that is adjacent to another card, so long as the value on that card is lower. So for example, I could play this 8 here because it's lower than both the 10s. And what we can then do is we can move cubes from one of the adjacent cards onto the card that I just placed. If the card that is having the cubes taken off is pink, you can move 3. If the card is green, you can move 2. And if the card is purple, you can move 1. So I'm going to take 3 cubes off of this 10 and put it onto the 8. And I can transfer cubes as long as the total value of the card and the number of cubes is different. Okay? Heat will always flow towards the lesser of the two values. Okay, so here's an example where we can't move cubes anymore between these two cards, right? So the total value here is 14, the total value here is 14, and so now we can no longer transfer cubes between the two. And the idea there, right, is that whenever two objects have the same temperature, they no longer transfer heat between the two, okay? Okay, now the other thing that can happen here, instead of playing a card and moving cubes, you can also do work. So doing work involves picking up a card, and in this game, if you take a card that is on the outside, you may take a cube. Okay? And again, if that card is green, you can take 2 cubes. If the card is pink, you can take 3 cubes, and if the card is purple, you can take 1. So whenever a row or a column or a diagonal row gets completed, you have the option of then doing work and taking a cube off. Okay, so the idea behind doing work, when you do work, the cube that you're taking actually represents the small amount of work that you actually get to do, and the cubes that are left have to go back into the center. Okay, so we're reconcentrating some of the heat. And the idea here is that heat generally flows from a point of concentration outward. You can see how all the cubes that we had in the middle start to get dispersed, right? This is the second law of thermodynamics. Heat will always flow from a concentrated, organized area to being more dispersed. We're also representing the idea here with the lower numbers that heat always flows from an object of high temperature to an object of low temperature. In addition, the colors, pink being able to move 3 cubes, green being able to move 2, and purple being able to move 1, represents how efficiently some things transfer heat, right? So some things like metals are very good conductors of heat, and so they're able to transfer a lot of heat at once or very quickly. Some things like plastics, water, are better insulators. They don't do a good job of transferring heat. So these would be your purple cards that are rather inefficient at moving the heat. Okay, so just as another example of a project that you might consider doing, I asked you to think about a game or some kind of a representation that you might make to illustrate the principles of thermodynamics. And so again, yeah, just another possibility for you guys as you are thinking about what your project might look like. And again, if you're going to do something like this, make sure that just as I did, you talk about how the principles of thermodynamics are being illustrated by your design. Okay, talk about the different rules that apply, talk about the the objective of the game as well. So if you have any questions, guys, please let me know. We'll talk to you later.